Hi guys, it's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zickery of Space Command. And today we're going to be talking about some amazing Dune rarities that I've come across, and I wanted to share them with you. We'll see how that goes, but before we get to that, I wanted to talk about just one final coda to the previous video I did, which I hope you've watched. It's about director's cuts you must watch always instead of a theatrical version of certain sci-fi classics. And the one that I left out is this one that just came out, the 4K director's cut of Star Trek the Motion Picture. Now, when Star Trek the Motion Picture came out in 1979, it was a rushed job. They cut all the character stuff out for that 2-hour running time. Robert Weiss, the great director of Day the Earth Stood Still and Andromeda Strain and West Side Story and Sound of Music and so many other classic films, he had longed to do a corrected version that put back in the scenes that were really very well done, and do a whole bunch of things to make the film work much better. It's a flawed film, but it's really worth seeing in this director's cut. Not the one they released a few years ago in DVD, but this new one has new visual effects, correct color coding, so it doesn't look all pastel-y, and it's just really the definitive version. So that's that. And of course, subscribe. We're almost at 100,000 subscriptions. Subscribe, ding the bell, comment, tell your friends, all that stuff. We're going to have some amazing Mr. Sci-Fi videos coming on stuff that I'm sure you're going to be really interested in and find fascinating, with insider information on the world of science fiction based on my work and my friendships with many of the most famed names in science fiction, shall we say. So, okay, but today we're talking about Dune Rarities. And with Denis Villeneuve's Dune 2 coming out, which I think will be a very strong movie. I think it's going to be very good. I liked the first one. It's not my favorite movie, but it's certainly skillful, well done. But there are other versions of Dune that I wanted to tell you about. Now, of course, Frank Herbert wrote Dune. It came out in the 60s, and it won the Hugo and the Nebula. It's become one of the great classics of science fiction, and people have been trying to do a movie of Dune pretty much from when it was published. And the first guy who wanted to make the movie and who acquired the rights was Arthur Jacobs, who previously had done Planet of the Apes. And he started working on it. At one point, Ridley Scott was brought aboard, but Arthur P. Jacobs died suddenly. I think it was a heart attack, and so the rights reverted, and they were acquired by an aspiring producer named Michael Sadu, who affiliated with Alejandro Jodorowsky, the director of El Topo and The Holy Mountain. Very kind of acidy, kind of counterculture kind of director, and he started pulling together a version of Dune. Now, this is the first thing I can share with you, which is the current issue of Infinity Magazine, which is quite wonderful if you've never seen it. It goes into all this wonderful science fiction stuff from previous decades, and this is their issue that deals with Jodorowsky's Dune. And now there's also a wonderful documentary on Jodorowsky's Dune called Jodorowsky's Dune, and here's some of the illustrations from that time and photos, and you can go online and you can see a lot of stuff from the pre-production phase. The movie, of course, never got made, but there's a lot of very cool stuff around it, including the fact that he hired some of the illustrators who would become the prime design geniuses working on such films later as as Alien and Aliens and so forth. He brought together Dan O'Bannon and Mobius, Jean Giraud, and Ron Cobb and H.R. Giger, and just an amazing amount of talent. And that entire team was brought over to Alien when Dan O'Bannon sold that script, and Ridley Scott was brought aboard. So it basically, Jodorowsky's Dune, although it was never made, was instrumental in creating the great age of science fiction films that came afterwards. And so this is well worth investigating and checking out. The visuals are very cool. Whether that movie would have been any good is unknown. There's the art team, the design team was very strong, but his casting choices were very weird. Salvador Dali was going to play the Emperor. He wanted Orson Welles for Baron Harkonnen, yeah, on and on and on. Mick Jagger for Fade. Would it have worked? Would it have gelled? Who knows? Who can say? So after Jodorowsky's plans for Dune fell apart, the movie again was acquired, and Universal Studios and Dino De Laurentiis were part of that team. Dino De Laurentiis was a very famed Italian producer who had done a wide variety of films, including his version of King Kong, which is problematical to say the least. But Dune was going to be the big science fiction movie, the franchise. They were hoping that it would go toe-to-toe with Star Wars. Star Wars, of course, by then was a huge hit. But Dune is a much darker work, and so from the get-go, it was unlikely it was going to click in the way that Star Wars did. But they hired David Lynch. Now, David Lynch was the great director who at that point had done Eraserhead. He had done The Elephant Man, which was a huge critical success. He was brought aboard. He had never done a movie on this scale before or at this budget level before. And the movie that came out, the 2-hour version that came out theatrically, was not a financial or critical success, but it had many wonderful things in it. And a book has come out on David Lynch's film. It's called A Masterpiece in Disarray. It's a very interesting book. It's by Max Every, and I've been reading it, and I'm really enjoying it. And it has so many of he's really done his research. He's interviewed all the main people and found quotations from the ones that he wasn't able to, the ones who may not be living anymore, etc. But phenomenal, just phenomenal. And it's a really good book. And the main thing with David Lynch's Dune is that his vision really never got out, and he has disavowed the movie. It was so traumatic for him, but fans found, when with TV releases and so forth, there were added scenes and so forth, and so a fan named Spice Diver, who goes by the name Spice Diver, put together a 3-hour version, putting effects back in, doing a number of things. And it's a wonderful, wonderful version. I'm hoping to share it at the end of this video. So if we'll see if YouTube lets me do this. If not, I'll post a link. But it's really phenomenal. It's 3 hours long. That's an extra hour, and it's just astonishing. So I highly, 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 highly recommend it. But and as I read in my previous video, Dino De Laurentiis felt that taking an hour out of the film at Universal's request, so it would have a 2-hour runtime instead of 3 hours, was a huge mistake. There are many. The visual design is great. A lot of the casting choices are stupendous. There's many, many things to value in this version, and of course, including the toy of Sting as Fade, which has, amazingly, it has turning action. See, it does that when you push a button. Wow, who could want more than that? But it's definitely worth checking out. I really recommend it. Spice Diver changed the ending to be more in line with what Frank Herbert intended. You may disagree with that, but I think it was the right choice, because Frank Herbert's point of view was never that Paul Muad'Dib was the hero of the piece. It was the basic notion that messiahs, people who you follow unquestioningly, can lead to disaster. And it's a fascinating view and a fascinating journey. And, the story really holds up. Now, finally, I said Dune Rarities, and finally we get to something that really is. This is one of a kind, this journal that I came across. I went to an antiquarian book show recently, and I found this. And no one ever who didn't really go into the stacks and really go over what people were selling would have found this, because it was just stuck in a bookcase. Very, very, very anonymous. And I'll tell you what this is. I bought it, and I'm going to send it to my friend Kevin Anderson, who co-writes the Dune books with Frank Herbert's son Brian, the new Dune books, because this is something I think he will treasure. Here's the information on it. Kathy Tilson was born in Hot Lake, Oregon on April 21st, 1926 to Oliver Dash and Kathleen Marie Dash. She had one brother, Frederick Dash. She died after a brief illness in Daly City, California on August 1, 2017. Well, okay. Here's the cool part. While in high school in 1944, Tilson was an officer copy girl at the Oregon Journal, where her tenure overlapped with that of Frank Herbert, who worked for the Journal from 1943 to 1945. Herbert published his first ever short story, Survival of the Cunning, in Esquire in 1945, and Tilson clipped the story and author photo and saved them in her scrapbook with a photograph of her by then former co-worker from the Oregon Journal. So in this journal, if we flip to this page that I've marked, well, first of all, here's a photo of Kathy and her co-worker, Frank Herbert, a very young, beardless Frank Herbert. And here is, we'll get to the right page. Here is Frank Herbert's author's photo. Look at that, how young he was. And a clipping of him in a different pose. And here is the first short story. Esquire was a very prestigious magazine at the time. And here is the first ever short story published by Frank Herbert. Look at that. There it is. There it is. So this is an amazing little piece of science fiction history. And I'm so glad that Kathy saved this. And I'm so glad that the book dealer acquired it and I found it. And I'm going to send it to Kevin as a present. So don't tell him anybody. So there it is. I mean, just the amazing world of book collecting and book stores and book dealers and antiquarian book fairs. You can find things that are lost to time. And since I'm the author of The Twilight Zone Companion, finding incredible rarities that are important to bibliographers and historians is always a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I can't speak highly enough of it. So, that said, now we're going to see if YouTube will let me share with you the Spice Diver 4K cut of David Lynch's Dune, which is as close as we're ever going to get to a director's cut until David Lynch decides to wade in and do his bit on it. But that's it for now. Lots more coming. Please subscribe to Mr. Sci-Fi. Please tell your friends. If you want to support Mr. Sci-Fi, we have Patreon. We have Space Command shares that you can buy for $7,500. Just email me at markzickery@gmail.com. And until next time, enjoy the world of science fiction. And while you're at it, enjoy your life too. Hi guys, it's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi again. And sadly, I was right. YouTube did block my video that included the Spice Diver 4K cut of the 3-hour version of David Lynch's Dune, which is so unfortunate. So I'm going to see if any of you guys have ideas about what I might do to be able to put this up again and run it, because there's other sites that have that version of the film on YouTube. So clearly there's a listing pattern that allows that to go up. But meantime, I'm going to be putting just below here a link to the Spice Diver 4K cut, which I highly recommend that you all watch. And, you know, sorry about that, but I'm not inside YouTube's head, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. But we'll be continuing with many, many more videos to come. And thanks so much for everything. Talk soon. Bye.